and these are like a 3 mantra from Rig Veda, and part of those 3 months. Okay, all 3 of them have been given to us by Rishi Vishwamitra. जल और अग्नि का घनिष्ठ संबंध है. जल प्रपात से ऊर्जा मिलती है. प्रपात means falling down. Okay. प्राचीन काल से इसी द्वारा घराट चलते आ रहे हैं. आधुनिक काल में जल विद्युत उत्पन्न की जाती है. जल कण हाइड्रोजन और ऑक्सीजन का मिश्रण है. आकाश में जब किसी विशेष दबाव में जल कण फट जाते हैं तो उस विस्फोट से गर्जन उत्पन्न होती है और विद्युत पैदा होती है. इस वैज्ञानिक क्रिया को ही आगामी मंत्रों में समझाया गया है. अविंदत्रुहु दर्शतम स्वधंतः. ऋषियों ने इस दर्शनीय अग्नि को जल में पाया. अपाम गर्भो नृतमोह यवनो अग्नि. अग्नि जल के अंदर रहने वाला है, नेता और महान है. अपाम गर्भो दर्शतम औषधि नाम. अग्नि जल के अंदर रहने वाला और औषधियों का रूप दाता है. जल में अग्नि बसत है. ऋषियन का फरमान वैज्ञानिक भी कथन है. जल से विद्युत जान निरख आकाशी विद्युत. ऋषियन ने कथ दीन. जल में अग्नि है बसत ज्ञान जगत को दीन. अग्नि जल के भीतर है छिपी मम्मीत. प्रकट होत आकाश में सबको होत प्रतीत. भिन्न भिन्न रूप व गुण भिन्न वनस्पतिन में जोए. जल भीतर जो अग्नि है उससे ही ये होए. जल में अग्नि की प्रभुताई देख लो बादल में ये भाई. गर्ज गर्ज बादल ये सुनाए अग्नि मेरे संग रह पाए. Today we're going to start the chapter 14 of Astavakra Gita. And in this chapter there are only 4 verses and they have been recited by King Janak. So it's almost like a Janak's conclusion in this section, and he is declaring that an awakened person can be fully understood by another awakened person. Because a person who has experienced the reality, the truth, can understand the other person. Yeah? And in order to experience yourself in reality, there has to be a calmness, a complete calmness in the mind. And he uses the term in these verses in this chapter, Shunya Chitta. Shunya Chitta, avoid mind. Because mind is the one where the thoughts are. As long as the thoughts are flowing, there's no void, there's no calmness. Sometimes those thoughts are very turbulent. Sometimes they could be calming also, but still there are thoughts. And Shunya Chitta is where there's just stillness in the thoughts. Shunya Chitta. So King Janak says, Prakrityaha Shunya Chittaha Ya Pramadat Bhav Bhavnaha Nidritaha Bodhita Iv Ksheen Samsmarnaha Hi Saha. Prakritya, by nature. By nature means spontaneously. So his nature has become like that. Shunya Chitta, empty mind. Ya means who? Pramadat. Pramad is when we keep on delaying something. Pramad. Okay? Little laziness. Bhav, bhavna. Thinking of objects by chance. Nidrita, asleep. Bodhita, awake. If means as if. Ksheen samsmarnaha, one whose recollection has extinguished recollection about the worldly life. Kshin samsmarna. He means indeed, sa means he. So King Janak says, he indeed has his recollection of worldly life extinguished. Who becomes void-minded spontaneously? Who thinks of sense objects only by chance? So this is what pramad over here means. Once in a while, here and there, the worldly thoughts will come. And who is, as it were, awake, though physically asleep? Nidrita bodhita. Okay, even during sleep. See, average person is sleeping even while awake. Over here, this kind of a yogi is awake even though physically asleep. See, if we just try to read this literally, we just get lost. What is it trying to say? So that's why we always talk about that language can never express experiences through the physical level. If we have experienced this state, only then we can understand what Janak is talking about. That he indeed has his recollection of worldly life extinguished. We are constantly thinking about the worldly life. The things which happened decades ago, we still like to remember those. Over here, this yogi has extinguished all the worldly memories. Once in a while they'll come, but they don't disturb him. And who becomes void-minded, empty mind? And he thinks about the sense objects only by chance. And he is awake, even though physically asleep. So King Janak is trying to explain the inner condition and the outer behavior of a person whose mind has become still and empty of all thought movements. Shunyachit. Okay. See, we often talk about the vasanas. These vasanas are the one which become the thoughts. So that means the vasanas have been extinguished also. So fewer and fewer vasanas. The vasanas in us produce fresh impulses of desires, and we create more and more thoughts. But in this kind of a yogi, they have been extinguished. So a man of perfection is one who has gone beyond his vasanas. That's why it's declared that one who has extinguished all the worldly memories. All the worldly memories. That doesn't mean that he doesn't remember his name, but he doesn't identify himself with his name. He does not identify himself with the position. Whatever is in the present, he does it, and this is it. Okay. So the state of vasana-lessness is a state of utter mental stillness. At least we need to experience this, if not most of the time during meditation. That should be
Hersh, can you repeat this sentence, please?
one who has experienced, one who has extinguished his worldly memories is described as a man of perfection. So the state of vasana-lessness is a state of utter mental stillness in meditation. So we got to be watchful of our, when we do meditation, we should watch at that time. Are we reaching that Shunya Chit at that time or not? Is our mind completely calm or not? Okay. As long as his physical body exists, so it's King Janak does have a physical body. He has the duties also. So he is forced by its prarabdha. So that's what he said over there when he talks about things of sense objects only by chance. It's like a prarabdha he is talking about. So he will be voluntarily forced into some fields of sense objects. Just like as long as we have a body, we'll have to eat something. As long as we have some kind of a job to do, we'll have to think about it. So that's about it, not a lingering thought. See, in average persons, what happens in the mind, whether we are doing something or not, we are thinking about something else. Right? A person who cannot sleep at night, that means the mind is not still. Mind is thinking about something else. It's not the time to think, but mind thinks. When we try to meditate, mind is somewhere else. When we are eating also, we like to watch TV at that time. When we are driving, we want to turn the radio on. Then we cannot really concentrate on what we are doing. That's why the government made it illegal. You cannot talk on the phone and drive. Accidents do happen that way. I heard that in Canada, you cannot even eat or drink while you are driving. Because you do get distracted. So over here, we are talking about absorbing ourselves into the highest. So the mind has to be still. Okay. So, but the key word over here, two keywords actually. One is he has extinguished the vasanas. Second is while sleeping, he is still awake. And we all know that that is part of Bhagavad Gita also. Lord Krishna mentioned that is a yogi. Okay. So one
और
who
6 पर ये समझ नहीं आ रहा, he is still awake while sleeping. Is he saying that he's identifying with Atma, and because Atma is always awake and he's awake?
exactly, you got it. You got it. Yes, because identification with the Atma never sleeps. Right?
Yeah.
That is the only thing in us which never sleeps. Otherwise, body sleeps, mind sleeps, intellect sleeps. Atma never sleeps, so he is identifying with that. And how did that happen? With the stillness of the mind. Because as long as the mind is churning, we cannot identify. We are identifying with the mind. So this is the practice. Okay, this is the sadhana. And this state or a mental state, he did not reach through drugs or the pills. Okay? He achieved through practice, yoga sadhana. Okay? So then it became, first it was a sadhana, need to practice, then it becomes spontaneous. Then you cannot even forget that you are the Atma. So he has reached that state. That's what he says. Okay? So he becomes casually conscious of the physical part of his life, casually, here and there, when it's needed. Most of the time, he is absorbed in the infinite. That's what we got to understand from this verse. Then he says, Ko dhanani, ko mitrani, ko me vishe dasyavaha, ko shastram, ko cha vigyanam, yada me galita sapriha. Ko means where. Dhanani, riches. Dhan. Ko mitrani, where are the friends? Me means my. Vishya dasyava, thieves in the form of sense objects. Dasyava, like a das. Vishyon ke das. Right? See, if we are so enchanted by the objects of this world, we are a das of the objects. Right? Vishya dasyava. Ko shastram, where are the scriptures? Kocha Vijnanam. Vijnanam is the knowledge. Yada means when, me means my, Gallitaha has melted. Hindi में term आती है ना, गाल देना, Gallita, melted. Sapriha, desire. When once the desires have melted away. Okay. So the last part comes in the beginning. Yada me galita sapriha. When once the desires have melted away, where are my riches? Where are my friends? Where are the thieves in the form of sense objects? Where are the scriptures? And knowledge itself. See, all of this, whatever he's talking about, whether the riches or the friends or the sense objects or even the knowledge and the scriptures also, they are all means to attain the highest. So he says, when a person is there, where are they doesn't even matter. So means did their part and that this person is above. That's why he said desires melted away. So whatever we have in the physical charm, the ultimate purpose is to melt away our desires, not to multiply our desires. Melt away our desires. Not just the riches, but even the scriptures. The knowledge. Why do we want the knowledge? Why do we want to study the scriptures? So that our desires, worldly desires, get melted away. So that's why he said, when the desires have melted away, where are the riches? Does it really matter how much I have? We are not counting how much I have. It is there. We know that life is not about that. So riches, friends, scriptures, knowledge, they all have a great value for our security, our comfort, our satisfaction. But only as long as we are living as an egoistic person. They are good for the ego. But for the higher purpose, we don't need them. So when desires have melted away to one who has come to experience the infinite blissful state, what values are these external riches and the friends and the scriptures? Okay. So he's not putting them down. He just says that they have a value. Value is only as a means, not as an end. In Bhagavad Gita also, the similar kind of a word, truth was spoken. In chapter 2, verse number 46, you can look at it. Because in chapter 2, there's a long chapter, lot of information there. That's why it's called a Sankhya Yoga, the chapter 2. What did Lord Krishna say in that? He says, Yavanartham udpane sarvataha samlutodke tavan sarveshu vedeshu brahmanasya vijanata. He says to the Brahman. Brahman means a person who has achieved that perfection. To the Brahman who has known the self. So he's not talking about a Brahman with a last name or anything. Not as a caste Brahman. A Brahman who has known the self. What else he has known? All the Vedas. Vedeshu are of so much use as is a reservoir of water in a place where there is flood everywhere. Okay, so what use is the water to a person if there is a water everywhere? The same way a person who knows the infinite, who has gotten in touch with the infinite bliss, these worldly riches, worldly people, worldly scriptures, worldly knowledge has no use. Okay? But remember, these are the means in the earlier stage. He's talking about a person who has reached there. So to one who has realized the self, then the value of the scriptures or the knowledge of the friends or the riches doesn't have any use.
कुछ
विज्ञाते
क्वेश्चन है, सॉरी, इसके बाद विषय दस्य, विषय का क्या मतलब था और दस्य का क्या मतलब था?
Dasya means das. Das means servant. Servant or thieves. Something who will take your attention away.
Okay.
That is a thief. Vishya means the objects, sense objects. Okay. So sense objects could be at the physical level. They could be at a mental level. Okay. So any kind of an object. Anything other than God and Atma. Okay. So that's what it means. So the thieves in the form of sense objects. Okay. So they are like a thieves. They steal your attention away.
So those are dasyas.
Yeah.
And Vishya is Atma?
Objects. Yeah, Vishya means objects. Dasya means, see, that means thieves also. That means you become a das also. When a person who becomes a servant of the objects, so that means that your attention has been stolen away.
Okay.
Right? Your attention, your mind, which is supposed to be absorbed into the infinite, it got absorbed into something lower. So something stole your attention. And what happened? You became a slave to it. Okay? So that's what it means.
Thank you.
Okay. Number 3. Vigyate sakshi purushe param atmani cha ishvare nirashye bandh mokshe cha na chinta mukte mama. Vigyate, having realized. Vigyate. Sakshi purushe, self who is the witness. Paramatmani, the supreme self. Cha means and, Ishvara means Lord. Nairashya, desirelessness. This is not a hopelessness, it's a desirelessness. Bandh mokshe, in bondage and liberation. Cha means and, na means not. Chinta, anxiety or worry. Mukteye, emancipation. Mukti. Mam means my. As I have realized the Supreme Self, who is the witness, Sakshi, and the Lord, Ishwar, the Purush, and have become indifferent both to bondage and liberation. I now feel no anxiety for my emancipation. See, these 4 verses in this chapter, they are called Shanti Chatushya. That's another name for these 4 verses. A sense of infinite tranquility. So that's why he's talking about over here, no anxiety about the freedom or liberation. So King Janak is trying to communicate to us why this spiritual state is so peaceful, and how this state of tranquility is never disturbed by the usual storms. Normally the storms come from body, from mind, from intellect. He says, I realize, I am the witness, I am the Sakshi, this is who I am of all that is happening within and without. Sakshi Purushaha. This is the key word over here. Sakshi Purushaha. This is this enlivening presence which is watching everything. That's why it's called Ishwar. See why it's called Purush? Purush. Puri means this body. City is called, wherever something is people are dwelling, that's called a Puri. See, just like in India, so many cities, they have that name as a Pur, right? Gurdaspur, Rampur, Hoshiarpur. Pur means a place where people dwell. So this is a Puri, Pur. And who resides there? Ish. Purush. Okay, so in this dwelling, there is a Lord resides, and that's what I am. He says, this enlivening presence is in me all the time. That this is the Lord of this Puri. So he says that's why a person who realizes becomes indifferent to both bondage and liberation then. No anxiety about it. Because liberation is only for one who is in bondage. Sakshi can never be bondaged. God can never be bondaged. So what is the question about? What is the anxiety about liberation or the bondage then? Okay. So liberation is only for one who is bondaged, who is in bondage, and to the liberated, there can never be any sorrow of bondage, nor the bliss of liberation. So these two dualities don't even exist. So that's why he says, Chinta mukte mama, because there's an infinite bliss. This kind of a state of infinite peace can never be comprehended by the intellect. If you try to understand, no, with my intellect, I'm going to understand it. No, it has to be experienced only. Because it's so vast, it's so big, it's so unlimited, cannot be understood with a limited language or a limited intellect. It's almost like if there's an ocean and somebody gives me a spoon to empty the ocean, I won't be able to do it. So this is how it is. Trying to comprehend, try to understand this kind of a bliss and the peacefulness with our small intellect. Because intellect is what? Part of the Prakriti. Prakriti is what? Limited. It's created by the Creator. So that's why we got to experience this. That's why in the beginning I told you what he's talking about over here in these 4 verses. This should, we don't need to have a dialogue about it. We need to just practice what he told us earlier, and eventually, with the grace of God, we'll feel it. This is something to be experienced. Okay, because it's unthinkable. Number 4. Antaha vikalpaha shunyasya bahi swachand charina भ्रांतस्य इव दशा Ta ta tadrisha eva janate. Anta. Anta means within. Vikalpaha, devoid of thoughts. Vikalp. Shunya. Vikalpaha shunyasya. Together it means, shunyasya means devoid, like a no. And vikalp is the thoughts. So devoid of thoughts. Bahi means outside. Swachand charine. One who roams, see charina means roaming. So one who roams about at his own pleasure. Swachand. Apni khushi ke liye. Swachand. Bhrantasya iv, like a deluded one. Dasha, condition. Ta means such and such. Tadrishaha, those like him. Ev means surely. Janate means knows. The different conditions of a wise man who, devoid of any thoughts within, outwardly roams about at his own pleasure, like a deluded man, can only be understood by those like him. Like him. Because this kind of a man of perfection is established in the higher planes of consciousness, has transcended his mind and intellect, and mind is a silent, shunya chit. So he is free from all kinds of doubts, hesitations, uncertainties, confusions. So he just lives very spontaneously. Average person cannot understand. They might think he's just a fool. What did people talk about Meera? Right? She was totally connected with the, and there have been many, many other examples also. They lose the consciousness, worldly etiquettes also, where people like us are very much, we live our life according to the worldly etiquettes. Especially these days, we have like a different glasses for different drinks, or different forks and spoons I have seen to eat different kinds of foods, or where to place, right, in the table. But these kind of people, they are above that, beyond worldly etiquettes. No social or political or religious laws are applicable to them, because this person lives carefree. He wants nothing, needs nothing. Because we act like that because we want something and we need a lot. We want admiration also, and we need things also, and we want people also. So he is beyond that. He has no demands, no desires. He is full in himself. He has become the native of the divine fields of consciousness. He is just like, he knows I'm temporarily over here. Permanent resident is with God. He
Can
is.
you repeat that? Can you repeat that sentence?
He has no
become...
demands, no desires. He is full in himself. And he has become the native of the divine fields of consciousness. And he understands that where I am right now is a temporary resident. See, where we think that, no, we're going to be here permanently. Everybody else is going to die, but we're going to be here. We never visualize our death, physical death. But he knows it's a temporary. Okay. So how can such a person be judged except by a person of equal vision? So we cannot judge this person, even though we can call him a fool or whatever. But we really cannot judge. We really cannot even know. Okay, because our evolution is not at the same level. This is a man of total realization. And in Yoga Vashishta, Rishi Vashishta talked about a person like this. First, let me give you the English translation, then I'll give you the Sanskrit verse also. One who has unveiled the truth in himself sits ever contented in enjoying the nectar of his own infinite peace. His mind and intellect completely at rest, with no inner thought disturbances, reveling in his own real nature. This is the state of mind of this man of
Read that
perfection.
again a little bit
Could you
slowly.
repeat?
Okay, one who has unveiled the truth. It's not that we need to bring this truth from somewhere. We got to unveil it. It's already here.
Yeah.
In all of us, we need to unveil it. That means we got to remove the avarna, right? Unveiling. So one who has unveiled the truth in himself sits ever contented in enjoying the nectar of his own infinite peace. So this is the nature of our self. Nectar of infinite peace. His mind and intellect completely at rest, with no inner thought disturbances, reveling in his own real nature. So we need to revel, we need to feel blissful, because that's our real nature is. But constantly we just want that bliss from outside. We think outside we'll get it. But we forget that that's our real nature. That unveil that. So shant antah karno galit vikalpaha savroop sarmya param sham amrit triptihi tishtati vidwan niravarna. So this is Yoga Vashishta. So any question on this chapter before we start the next chapter?
Manju Malhotra, question. Manju?
Okay,
नमस्ते हर्ष. आपने what did you give the title of these four? इसको क्या बोलते हैं इन चार को?
Shanti Chatushtya. Chatushtya.
How would you spell that? Shanti Chatu.
Chatu like a Shanti तो पता है कैसे लिखना है?
Yes, yes.
In English, if you want to write CHATUSHYA, Chatushya. Yeah.
CHAEU.
Chatush, CHA, Chatu,
Yeah.
TUSH. So for sh, SH, YA.
Yeah.
YA.
Okay. Okay.
So does it mean
Chatushya.
four? Does it mean four?
Four. Chatushya means four. Four verses about peace.
Shanti. Okay.
Shanti, peace.
That was my question also.
Yeah, that's what it means. So this is what a lot of translators, they called these four verses Shanti Chatushdaya.
Ushaya is more like जिसकी छाया में तुम रहते हो.
No, not a Chaya. No. Chatushya means it's like a four verses. That's what it really means. Shanti ke char verse. Chatushya.
Thank you.
Neeru, do you have one question before Hershey carries on?
Yeah, I just want to understand this word Chatushaya.
Yeah, Chatush. See, Chatur का मतलब होता है चार. Okay, and Shaya over here means the verses.
Only it is in context to this book, or it is used somewhere else?
No, it is other places also is used.
So
Okay.
Chatushaya.
Chatushya.
Shanti Chatushaya.
Shanti Chatushya. Yes. Okay. It's a technical term for the verses. Anybody else before we move on to the next one?
Just a comment. After reading all the 4, we are so technically stuck on one word. That doesn't make sense. But it was just a comment.
Okay. Yeah. And what we need to do is, what we need to get stuck on? Melting our desires away. Because if we work on that, melting the desires away, Shanti will come. Because main culprit is what? Desires. We came here with certain desires, and instead of extinguishing those, what did we do? Multiplied those. If you look at it right now, our life, I mean, these days we have an opportunity to look at our desires. Spend some time and try to just pluck them out. So to me, I think that is what we need to do. And then this piece to Aigi. There's no question about it, because he said it very clearly. It's all inside. That's who we are. Embodiment of this eternal peace, not even a piece, little bit. Not a piece in pieces. It's a constant flow of peace. So we got to reduce our desires or melt away our desires. Okay? So that is our homework.
Hershji,
Yes, Nishi.
in third verse, when we're talking about bondage and liberation and emancipation, it's all mainly about desires, not about mukti or moksha, when he says, I have no anxiety for emancipation.
Yeah, because he says that I am the Atma. Atma is never bondaged. So if something is not bondage, there's no question about liberation.
Right.
Bondage and liberations are only if we don't recognize we are the Atma.
Beautiful.
Right? So this is the recognition we need.
That just gave him all the liberation. Just
Yeah, it is
realization.
always liberated. That's why, don't I always tell you that in our scriptures, loudly it has been said that sadhana, yoga sadhana is not for the Atma. Sadhana is at the body level, at the mind level, at the pranic level, at the intellect level, at the ego level. Atma is always free. But we just don't recognize ourselves with the Atma. That is the problem. So in this verse, when he says that मैं तो साक्षी पुरुष हूँ, विज्ञाते साक्षी पुरुष है, परमात्मनि च ईश्वरे. So very, very powerful words he is using over here. Then in the next line he says, I am indifferent to both the bondage and liberation. And I don't have any anxiety about those, because I am the Atma. It was never bondaged. If something is never bondaged, what is the question about liberation?
And all the worry we do, we have to all
the worry we do, that when will I get liberated? When will I get liberated? Because we just, and who is worried? Worry is in the mind, not in the Atma.
Yeah.
So this is the clarity this scripture is giving it to us. And from a person who has all these duties to do, but still he feels liberated. Last night I was watching Love Question, the episode where Sita comes into the darbar
Going directly in front of the doorway.
And Janak is sitting over there. And Janak, when he saw Sita after so many years and saw Lava Kush also declaring that we are the sons of Ram and Sita, what did Janak do? He sat there. Sure, the love in his eyes. He did not say that, oh, this is my daughter now. You have mistreated him and I'm going to take him back to Mithila. He just sat there. You know what he did? Blessed her even while she was going into the Dharti Mata. So from the outer expressions also we can see that what really happens internally in these personalities. Okay. So Janak, it's not that we just think about and we have such a regard for him because he was just Janak. But it's just like the level of achievement we got. It's amazing and it's a good example for us. Being a king, he could reach there. Why can't we? We don't have that many responsibilities. Okay. So we have to learn from these great role models. So if you don't have any question, let's look at the next one.
Hershey, I think.
Hershey, just a comment. So
Yes,
basically it is a liberation from our mind only.
Yes, liberation from our mind in aggregate. So ego also, mind also, intellect also. Okay. Physical body is going to, according to the prarabdha, it will go through that phase. While living in the physical body also, just freedom from these mental disturbances, fluctuations. Okay. Yeah. So next chapter, chapter 15. This is perhaps one of the most significant section in the entire Astavakra Gita. Did I say that before also? To some other chapter too? But I think this chapter you will see that the verses are just beyond words. There are about 20 verses in this chapter. Because in a very strong language, he says, the one self in all existence and all existence in the one self. That really makes, gives me goosebumps when I read something like that. Because all our life, we've been just talking about the multiple things, the polarity, this and that. But he talks about one self in all existence. And all existence in the one self. And then he says the supreme wisdom, God, which is indicated in the scriptures by that, with the capital T, that, has no birth, no action, no ego. Because normally we just keep on blaming God. God, you did this. Why did you do this? Why don't you do that? No birth, no action, no ego. That's what Brahm is. This chapter is about Brahm actually. Not Brahma, Brahm. This kind of a concept of absolute, this is called a Ajatvad. Ajatvad. Doctrine of non-origination. So we'll understand that also in this verse. And Rishi Astavakra, very lovingly, he insists in this chapter. He uses the word Shraddha. Shraddhatva, Shraddhasva, Have faith, my son, have faith. Shraddha word is used over here. So Shraddha in this grand, majestic truth. He says this self, this power is not only pure consciousness, which expresses uniformly in all other planes of consciousness. And what are the other planes of consciousness? There is a Jagrat plane, there is a Swapan plane, there is a Sushupti plane, there is a Turiya plane. It's everywhere. It's not just only in one plane. So the self is not only pure consciousness which expresses uniformly in all other planes of consciousness, but is also something worshipful. To be revered. And we call it Bhagavan. So he'll talk about this also in this chapter.
हर्षी वो 4 प्लेन्स कौन से थे प्लीज?
Jagrat, which is like a wakefulness. Swapan, which is a dream. Sushupti, which is deep sleep or a dreamless Sushupti. And Turiya, which is Samadhi. Okay, so these are the 4 layers of consciousness. First 3, all of us go through. 4th one, we need to go into the Samadhi. So in this chapter, the idea of Brahm is brought out for a direct and immediate apprehension of all the seekers. So we have to become serious student that I want to experience it. I've been reading about it. We've been talking about it. We discussed it that Brahm is everywhere. How come I have not experienced it? And Rishi Astavakra here, because this chapter is from Rishi Astavakra, he talks directly from his own mystic experience. Very profound and practical. Why it's profound? Because power of suggestiveness, you will see that, which can take a meditative mind to the very peaks. And it's practical because we do not find this kind of a clarity in other textbooks. There are a lot of subtle instructions to help us so that we can grasp it. Grasp this plane of higher meditation. So study this chapter very carefully. I'm not saying that you were not careful before, but this chapter, if you really study it with a more and more attention given to it, you will find it very helpful. So let's look at one verse and then we'll stop it there. And next week we'll continue. I think it will take us 2-3 weeks to finish this chapter. So Astavakra ji is saying, Yatha tatha upadeshena kritartha sattva buddhiman ajivam api jigyasu paraha tatra vimuhyati. Yatha tatha. Casually, in whatever manner. That's what it means. Yatha tatha. Upadeshen, by instruction. Kritarthaha, gains his end. Sattva buddhiman, a person of pure intelligence. Ajivam, throughout his life. Api means even. Jigyasu, desirous to know. Paraha, the other. Tatra means there. Vimuhyati is confused. A person of pure intelligence realizes the self even by instructions casually imparted. कहते हैं ना बुद्धिमान को इशारा ही काफी है. So a person of pure intelligence realizes the self even by instructions casually imparted. A man of pure intellect is confused in trying to realize the self even after inquiring throughout his life. So the purity of the intellect or the sattvikta of the intellect is talked about over here. Okay. I'm sure the similar way it has been translated in your books also, right? A person of pure intelligence realizes the self even by instructions casually imparted. A man of impure intellect is confused in trying to realize. So that with the impure intellect also a person is trying to, it's not that the person is not trying to become better, but the instrument is not right. It's almost like if I have a knife which is not sharp enough to cut something, I'm trying, but in the process I hurt either what I'm cutting or I can hurt my own wrist also. But if there's a proper tool, sharp enough, clean enough, I'll be able to do it better. So throughout, so even after inquiring throughout his life, there are people who just all their life, they keep on doing the sadhana, but not doing the sadhana the proper way. That's why they say the textbooks remaining the same, and the same teacher is teaching, explaining, expounding the truth to everybody, but different students are benefited differently. We see it in the secular studies also, we see it in the sacred studies also. Because we are trying to understand with the help of the intellect. Okay? And especially Upanishadic textbooks, they are so subtle, the intellect has to be sattvic first. A mind which is rich in sattva. How do we know our mind is mind intellect? I'm talking about man, like a man and buddhi both. How do we know it's a sattva or not? Predominantly it's calm and serene. Only then it's most receptive to the spiritual ideas which are discussed in the scriptures. When the mind is agitated, it's a tamas, rajas. And when the mind is clouded by dullness, that is tamas. So sattvic mind is a calm and serene. Rajasic mind is agitated. And a tamasic mind is dull. जिसको कहते हैं ना जड़ बुद्धि. Okay? It's not ready to absorb anything. So when the mind is stilled, well protected from all the agitations, and agitations are normally from the desires, passions. So when it's fully protected from there, that is called pure intelligence, ready to receive the divine message. So even a casual instruction will make a big impact in that kind of a student. Okay? So that's why those initial disciplines are talked about. Sham, Dam, Uprati, Titiksha, Samadhan, Shraddha, all of those. So that our mind is a sattvic. That is the reason. Okay, all those 6 qualities we need to cultivate. Yoga Vashisht also, Rishi Vashisht says, Adau Shamadam Praye Gune Shishyam Vishodhyet. Pashat Sarvamidam Brahma Shuddh Itihi Bodhyet. He says in the beginning, examine the student carefully for qualities of Sham and Dam, self-control and inner quietude. Sham and Dam. Thereafter advise him. You are the pure, what are you trying to advise the student? You are the pure Brahma. Sarvam idam Brahma. Pure Brahma who is the essence in all the universe. That's all the teaching actually. So Sham and Dam. Okay. So let's stop it here. If you have any question, we can talk about it. Otherwise, we'll do, if somebody wants to chant something.
Hersh, can you just repeat this last sentence?
You want Sanskrit
In the
one?
beginning, no.
In the
just
beginning, this is from Yoga Vashisht, by the way.
Yes.
In the beginning, examine the student carefully. So this is for a teacher.
Yes.
Okay, in the beginning, examine the student carefully for qualities of self-control and inner. See how far we have come from these days. These days, even a person who's teaching this kind of studies, they look at it whether payment has been given or not. In the real studies, that is not the criteria. Criteria is whether the Sham and Dam has been cultivated or not. Again, going back to that episode which I watched last night, it's just like Rishi Valmiki brought Sita and Lava Kush. Sita stayed with Rishi Valmiki for 12 years. He raised, helped, taught these 2 Kumars also. Everything. He gave everything to them. At the end, Sita goes into the Dharti Mata. Lava Kush, they go to Ram. And the humility on Valmiki's face, he did not say that make me a payment now. He did the namaskar and total detachment. That's what our rishis teach us. That's what I read in these scriptures. So in Yoga Vashisht, Rishi Vashisht is saying, in the beginning, examine the student carefully. You remember there was one Upanishad which we did? There are 6 Kumars. Which Upanishad was that? 6 Kumars, Prashna Upanishad. 6 Kumars come to the Guru and they say, we have some questions. What did the Guru say? Stay here in the ashram for a year. During that stay, he wanted to see whether they have cultivated these qualities or not. And he said, after that, you can ask me these questions, and if I know, I will answer those. He did not say that I know it everything. The whole Upanishad, if you get a chance, do study that Upanishad, Prashna Upanishad. 6 questions which we should be asking too.
Harji, we have done it in a retreat.
Yeah, we have done it in a retreat. Prashna
I
Upanishad.
have the papers.
Yeah. So those are the 6 questions. But for a whole year, they stayed there with the Guru first. Guru saw them whether the Sham and Dam were in their personality or not. So Rishi Vashisht says the same thing. In the beginning, examine the student carefully for qualities of self-control and inner quietude. Because if there's no quietness inside, nothing gets absorbed. Thereafter, advise him. And what is the advice? You are the pure Brahma, who is the essence in all this universe. This is the message. So whether we are studying Ramayana, or whether we are studying Bhagavad Gita, or whether we are studying Astavakra Gita or Bhagavad Puran, this is ultimately we got to know. You are
दम का क्या मतलब था? दम
the pure Brahm. Brahm means absolute truth.
नहीं,
God.
दम शम दम.
Oh, Sham
Dam
and
was-
Dam. Oh, Dam means indriyon ka control. Daman karo indriyon ka. Sense control. Sorry.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
On the Zoom, sometimes, it's not clear. It's not that you're not speaking clearly, but voice gets little disturbed. I hope you can understand me okay.
Hershey, we're at 11:37.
I'm not going to let you guys go. I'm not done. Just kidding.
Just
Just kidding. No, I'll let you go. So Manju, did you get it?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, you are the pure Brahm, who is the essence in all this universe. Okay, this is what we are trying to learn.
Thank you.
And experience, not just learn theoretically, ultimate experience with the help of practice and the grace of God. Okay, so
In
anybody
answer
wants to...
to in answer to Raj's question, it's on page 2. All these 6 qualities are given.
Page 2, Yog Darshan.
Page 2 of this book.
This book.
Oh,
in the beginning,
okay. Thank
in
you.
the beginning also these qualities were mentioned. So dam, basically dam means indriyon ka daman. Sham means peaceful mind. Okay, so we need to have full control over these. Okay, in order for the knowledge to seep into our intellect. Okay, so if there's no singer over here, we can ask
Manny's there.
request Manny to play a couple of minutes of any dhun is fine. You always do a good job, Manny.
All right.
But if any day anybody wants to sing, please let us know. Okay. But don't ask me to sing. I'm not a singer, so don't want to.
Your words are like song.
I'm not. I really don't know the melodies. Okay, I like many.
सबसे न्यारी न्यारी भरी भरी तेरी लीला सबसे न्यारी न्यारी भरी भरी तेरी लीला सबसे न्यारी न्यारी भरी भरी तेरी लीला सबसे न्यारी न्यारी भजमन नारायण नारायण हरि हरि भजमन नारायण नारायण हरि हरि जय जय नारायण नारायण हरि हरि जय जय नारायण नारायण हरि हरि श्रीमन नारायण नारायण हरि हरि श्रीमन नारायण नारायण हरि हरि
Thank you very much, Annie. That was excellent.